I think we just need to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more discerning, because we claim to follow the truth. And if we're justifying the ends by the means and kind of playing loose and fast with the data, we don't end up being truthful.
Hey friends, it's Abdu Murray, and this is As I Was Thinking, just a short video about things as I was thinking about them. And I'm joined today by Wes Huff, who is a good friend with Apologetics Canada. He's got his own website as well, wesleyhuff.com, where you can find out a bunch of information about the historical Christian faith. He is doing his PhD in ancient Christianity and the rise of Christianity, and he's an expert in manuscripts as well. So I'm asking him this question. Do Christians engage in evangelistic use of the manuscript evidence to favor the Bible or to prove the authenticity of the New Testament? Do they tend to overstate the case? And is there still a good case to be made based on the manuscripts? And what is a manuscript in the first place? So Wes, with all of that, take it away.
Yeah, I think we do. I think there's sort of a popular level apologetic type argument that presents this case that sometimes it's in the form of comparing the New Testament manuscripts to other ancient classic writers. Like we have this pile of 24,000 manuscripts for the New Testament, and then say you have a 4-foot high pile for Plato. And then you show that we have so much more manuscript documentary evidence for the New Testament compared with Plato and Homer and Herodotus and Xenophon, and go on and on and on. And then you, from that, say, okay, well, therefore the New Testament is true, it's inspired, and it's God's word. Unfortunately, you have too big of a leap there. And you have too big a leap because if we were to find, say, 26,000 copies of Homer in a stash somewhere, does that mean that now Homer's Odyssey is inspired? Well, no, it doesn't. So we have to be careful about what that actually proves when we use it. Now, the basic argument stands. We do have far more manuscripts, that is handwritten copies, evidence for the biblical New Testament. But part of the problem I realized when I started to jump into academic work and studying manuscripts is that biblical scholarship on this kind of field and study and classical scholarship in this kind of field and study go about things very differently. The biblical scholars will count every scrap that has a section of the New Testament on it as an individual manuscript, whereas classicists generally only count what they call the functional manuscripts, ones that they can really truly read and discern a text from. And so this creates a big imbalance because the numbers are inflated in one sense for the New Testament because they're just being counted differently. And there really is no way to quantify the classic writings in the same way that we do for the New Testament because we just do it in a different way. So in one sense, what that creates is an imbalance of comparing not just apples to oranges, but apples to orchards, because we have far more of a database for the New Testament. Another argument and kind of pitfall that I see happening is people go back to some really good resources like that of F.F. Bruce's book on Can You Trust the Bible? And they look at the numbers for some of these other ancient writers, and then they use the most up-to-date numbers for the New Testament, and then they put them in something like a chart. I'm guilty of this. I've done this in the past. The problem with that is that the numbers of these other writers are also being added to as the decades go on. But if you're going to a book like F.F. Bruce's that's now, 70, almost 80 years old, and you're using the numbers for Homer and Xenophon and Herodotus there, but you're using the most accurate updated numbers for the New Testament, what you're presenting is actually outdated, drastically outdated numbers for one and very, very up-to-date numbers for the other. And so it's not actually being honest with the data. The other issue is that we also need to be careful even from book to book. We have about 1,800 manuscript copies of the Gospel of Matthew. We have about 300 copies of Revelation. Well, are we going to say that Matthew is 6 times more accurate and inspired than Revelation? Well, no, we don't do that, right? So the end result stands. The New Testament is the most documented ancient source within all of antiquity. It's the most copied. It's the most disseminated. It's the most popular. in terms of what we've been able to dig up from the sands of ancient antiquity. That is true. I don't think we need to use comparative analysis in a way that doesn't really, it kind of plays loose and fast with the data. We can say still that what we have is accurate, is eyewitness, and is the most copied and the most reliable document from the ancient world, without kind of going into the nitty-gritty details, which kind of might not present the actual case. The New Testament is still reliable, and it would be even if we only had a handful of copies, because it still presents eyewitness accounts of who Jesus was, what he said, and how that happens. So based on the manuscript data, which I love, which I have committed my life to studying, I think we just need to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more discerning, because we claim to follow the truth. And if we're justifying the ends by the means and kind of playing loose and fast with the data, we don't end up being truthful, and we actually give far more fodder to critics than we really need to.
Yep. Well, thanks, Wes. And so this was As I Was Thinking, but you got to hear what Wes was thinking as well on this particular one. You can follow Wes at wesleyhuff.com, apologeticscanada.com. He's a speaker and a writer for them as well. And they got great material on this and other topics. You should follow our friends at Apologetics Canada. If you want to know more about this series, As I Was Thinking, or any of the other things we have available to you, do subscribe. Click the bell. Make sure you get notified when we have new information. Follow us on our social media platforms as well, and subscribe to the podcast and share it. The more you share it, the more this information gets around, and also the more people will be notified of it, even when they're not looking for it because of the algorithms. So thanks again, Wes, for joining us for As I Was Thinking, and we look forward to the next time.